The deep hum of the engines was the only sound on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. Captain Do-hyun Kim sat in his command chair, eyes fixed on the vast emptiness of space displayed on the main view screen. The ship had been mapping the outer systems of the Orion Arm for the past 3 months. It was routine work, but important for humanity's ongoing expansion into the stars. "Captain, I'm detecting an unusual energy signature," said Science Officer Ji-woo Park, her voice breaking the comfortable silence. Her fingers moved quickly across her console as she analyzed the readings. "It's unlike anything in our database." Do-hyun straightened in his chair. "Distance?" "Approximately 2 million kilometers, sir. It appears to be stationary." "Put it on screen maximum magnification." The view screen shifted, focusing on a distant point of light. As the computer enhanced the image, the light resolved into a shape that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. It was a ship, enormous compared to the horizon, with a dark hull that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the distant starlight. Its design was unlike any vessel humanity had encountered in 50 years of space exploration. The sharp, angular hull featured what looked like bony protrusions along its length, giving it the appearance of a massive skeletal predator frozen in space. "No response to standard hailing frequencies," reported Communications Officer Eun-ha Choi. "The ship appears to be without power except for minimal life support systems." Do-hyun frowned. "Life support? There are survivors?" Ji-woo nodded, her expression showing a mix of excitement and concern. "Life signs confirmed, Captain, but the readings are unusual. Nothing that matches known species in Galactic Concord records." The Galactic Concord, an alliance of 17 spacefaring civilizations that humanity had joined just 15 years ago, had shared their database of known species. If these life forms weren't in that database, they could be an entirely new encounter. "Tactical analysis," Do-hyun ordered. Tactical Officer Junseo Bei studied his console before responding. "The ship has significant weapon systems, sir, but they're offline. There's evidence of recent damage, possibly from an attack. I detect multiple hull breaches that have been sealed by emergency systems." Do-hyun stood and walked closer to the view screen, studying the mysterious vessel. First contact situations were delicate under the best circumstances. A damaged ship with unknown occupants required careful consideration. "Prepare an away team," he decided. "Full environmental suits and standard first contact protocols." "Sir," interrupted Political Officer Hyun-woo Kang, "Concord regulations suggest we should notify Central Command before boarding an unknown vessel." Do-hyun nodded. "Send the notification, but those life signs might not have time for us to wait for a response. We'll proceed with caution." 30 minutes later, Security Chief Tae-ho Song led the away team from the Horizon's shuttle bay toward the derelict ship. Besides Tae-ho, the team included Medical Officer Jia Lee, Engineer Min Jae-yoon, and 2 security personnel. "Approaching the vessel now," Tae-ho reported through the comm system. "There's what appears to be a damaged docking port on the ventral side." The captain watched from the bridge as the shuttle maneuvered carefully alongside the massive alien ship. "Proceed with docking," he ordered. "Maintain constant communication." After a tense few minutes, Tae-ho's voice came through again. "Docking successful. We're establishing an airlock seal now." A pause. "Seal confirmed. We're entering the vessel." The away team's helmet cameras transmitted feeds back to the horizon, showing dark corridors illuminated only by their suit lights. The interior architecture was as strange as the exterior. Corridors that seemed too tall and wide for human proportions, with the same bone-like material incorporated into the design. "The air is breathable," reported Jia, checking her instruments, "though the temperature is higher than human preference, about 30 degrees Celsius." "Keep your suits on for now," Do-hyun instructed. "We don't know what else might be in the environment." The team moved deeper into the ship, passing rooms with unfamiliar equipment and strange symbols etched into the walls. In some areas, they found signs of a struggle, scorch marks on walls and what might have been dried blood of an unusual dark green color. "Captain?" Min-jae called suddenly, his voice tense. I think I've identified this ship design from historical records. If I'm right, this is very bad. Explain, said Do-hyun. The bone-like structures, the overall design, they match descriptions of Mograxi vessels. A heavy silence fell over both the away team and the bridge crew. Everyone in human space knew about the Mograxi, feared apex predators of the galaxy. Every spacefaring race knew to avoid their territory. Their reputation for ruthlessness and territorial aggression had kept them isolated from the galactic concord for centuries. Are you certain? Do-hyun asked, his mouth suddenly dry. Not completely, Min-jae admitted. But the match is close to the warning files the Concord shared with us. Do-hyun exchanged a glance with Hyunwoo, whose face had paled. If he's right, the political officer said quietly. Concord's standing orders are clear. No interference with Mograxi affairs under any circumstances. Before Do-hyun could respond, Taiho's urgent voice came through. Captain, we've found survivors. Or one survivor. The helmet camera feeds showed the team had entered what appeared to be a large chamber. Several bodies lay on the floor, large insectoid forms with exoskeletons and multiple limbs. They were clearly dead, their bodies showing signs of weapon damage. But in the center of the room, inside what looked like a protective enclosure, something moved. The camera zoomed in, revealing a small creature no larger than a human infant. Unlike the adult forms, its exoskeleton appeared soft and not fully developed. 6 eyes blinked uncertainly at the suited humans, and it made a sound, something between a chirp and a whimper. It's a young one, Gia said, moving closer. Based on its size compared to the adults, I'd guess it's an infant or very young child. The small creature made the sound again, a pitiful noise that needed no translation. What do we do, Captain? Taeho asked through the comm. The Galactic Concord standing orders are clear. No interference with Mograxi affairs under any circumstances. Do-hyun stood from his chair, eyes fixed on the small, frightened creature on the screen. In that moment, he didn't see a Mograxi, a species feared throughout the galaxy. He saw a child, alone and afraid. We're taking it aboard, he said firmly. Alert Medical Officer Gia to prepare for an alien patient with unknown biology, and inform the Concord of our situation. Sir, Hyunwoo protested, this could be seen as an act of kidnapping by the Mograxi. The diplomatic consequences, I understand the risks, Do-hyun cut him off, but I will not leave a child, any child, to die alone. That's not who we are. That's not what humanity stands for. As Gia carefully approached the small Mograxi, her gentle voice soothing despite the language barrier, the creature stopped its frightened sounds. It watched the humans with all 6 eyes, perhaps sensing their intentions were different from whatever had killed its caretakers. It's okay, little one, Gia said softly. We're going to help you. None of them knew then that this simple act of compassion would send ripples across the stars, forever changing humanity's place in the galaxy. Medical Officer Gia Lee had never faced a challenge quite like this one. The small Mograxi cub lay on the examination table in the Horizon's medical bay, its 6 eyes blinking slowly as it watched her movements. The medical scanners hummed softly, overhead, gathering data on a species that no human had ever treated before. What can you tell us, Doctor? Captain Do-hyun asked, standing nearby with his arms crossed. Gia studied the readings on her screen before answering. Its vital signs are weak, but stable. The exoskeleton is still soft, which suggests it's very young. Primary teeth have barely emerged. She pointed to a section of the scan. Its digestive system shows signs of severe malnutrition. The species appears to be carnivorous, but at this developmental stage, it requires something different. Different how? Asked Chief Engineer Min Jae-yoon, who had joined them in the medical bay. During his academy days, he had studied xenobiology as a hobby, something that might prove useful now. It needs a complex nutritional compound, Gia explained. Something like milk in function, but with a completely different biochemical composition. Without it, the cub will not survive much longer. The small creature made a weak chirping sound as if understanding they were discussing its fate. One tiny clawed hand reached up toward the humans, a gesture so vulnerable it made even Security Chief Taiho Song shift uncomfortably. "Can we synthesize what it needs?" Do-hyun asked. Jia exchanged a glance with Min-jae. "Maybe. If we can analyze the residual compounds in its digestive system, our synthesizers might be able to replicate something close enough." "Get started immediately," Do-hyun ordered. "Use whatever resources you need." As the medical team began their work, communications, Officer Yuna Choi entered the medical bay. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Concord Central Command." Do-hyun nodded, not surprised. "In my office." The message displayed on his office screen was exactly what he had expected. The Concord representative, an elderly Tarani with gray skin and large concerned eyes, spoke with obvious alarm. "Captain Kim, we have received your report regarding the Mograxi vessel and survivor. You are hereby ordered to proceed immediately to Neutral Station 47 and surrender the Mograxi infant to Concord authorities. The Mograxi are dangerous. They will see this as kidnapping. They will retaliate. This is not a suggestion, Captain. It is a direct order." Do-hyun sat back in his chair considering the message. The Concord's fear was understandable. The Mograxi had a fearsome reputation. But abandoning a helpless infant to bureaucratic procedures that might take too long felt wrong on a fundamental level. He recorded a brief response. "Message received. We'll update on our situation as it develops. Horizon out." It wasn't a confirmation that he would obey the order, but it wasn't a direct refusal either. When he returned to the medical bay, Jia and Min-jae were bent over a console, analyzing data, as the synthesizer hummed nearby. "Any progress?" he asked. "Some," Min-jae replied without looking up. "The compound is incredibly complex. More than 30 essential proteins, unique fats, and trace elements we've never seen before. The Mograxi. Biology is fascinating. Can you make it?" Jia looked up. "We think so. But it will take time, and we can't guarantee it will be exactly right." "Do your best," Do-hyun said. "That's all any of us can do." For the next 3 days, the Horizon continued its journey through space, while its crew worked tirelessly to save the Mograxi cub. The Galactic Concord sent increasingly alarmed messages, now warning of diplomatic incidents and possible military consequences. Political officer Hyunwoo Kang dutifully reported each one to the captain. "Sir," Hyunwoo said during one such briefing, "I must formally advise you that continuing on this course could be seen as insubordination." Do-hyun looked at him steadily. "Noted. But we found a child in distress. I don't care what species it is. We will not abandon it." On the 4th day, a breakthrough came. Jia rushed onto the bridge, her normally calm face showing excitement. "Captain, we've done it. We've created a synthetic nutrient mix that should meet the cub's needs." "Should?" Do-hyun asked. "The only way to know for certain is to try it," Jia admitted. "But the analysis shows a 94% match to what we found in its system." Do-hyun stood. "Let's do it." In the medical bay, the crew gathered around as Jia carefully approached the weakened cub with an adapted bottle filled with a thick, slightly green liquid. The cub's condition had worsened over the days, its movements becoming slower, its chirps less frequent. "Come on, little one," Jia murmured, holding the bottle near the cub's mouthparts. "This will help you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, sensing the nutrients it desperately needed, the cub latched onto the adapted bottle. The entire medical bay held their breath as the small creature began to feed. "It's accepting it," Min-jae whispered, as if afraid to break the moment with loud words. Relief washed over the gathered crew as the cub continued to drink eagerly. When the bottle was empty, the cub made a new sound, a soft trilling that seemed to express contentment. "We did it," Jia said, smiling at her colleagues. "But it will need regular feedings to recover fully." Over the next few days, the cub's health improved dramatically. Its movements became more energetic, its eyes brighter. The crew established a feeding schedule, with different officers taking turns to care for the small creature. Communications officer Yuna Choi discovered that the cub responded positively to soft humming, Engineer Min Jae-yoon built a small habitat in the medical bay that mimicked what they guessed were Mograxi environmental preferences. Even Security Chief Taiho, initially the most wary, found himself spending off-duty hours observing the curious infant. "We should name it," Yoonhyo suggested one evening as she fed the cub, which now gripped the bottle with its own hands. "That's not advisable," Hyunwoo warned from the doorway. "The Mograxi have strict naming rituals. It would be seen as an insult." Yoonhyo looked down as the small creature finished its meal and reached out with a tiny clawed hand, grasping her finger and refusing to let go. "But we can't just call it the cub forever." Do-hyun, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. He watched the interaction between the human woman and the alien child. So different in biology, yet connected by this simple gesture of trust. "We'll call it Haru," he decided. "Haru?" Jia asked. "It means day in our language," Do-hyun explained, "because today marks a new beginning." The cub, now Haru, trilled softly as if approving of its new name. "Captain," Hyunwoo began to protest, "the diplomatic implications are something we'll deal with when the time comes." Do-hyun finished for him. "For now, we focus on keeping Haru alive and healthy." As if understanding it was being discussed, Haru looked around at the humans with all 6 eyes, its head tilting in a gesture they had come to recognize as curiosity. "I've adjusted the nutrient formula," Jia reported, checking her scanner. "Haru's growth rate is accelerating. At this pace, it could double in size within 2 weeks." "Good," Do-hyun nodded. "The stronger it gets, the better chance it has of surviving whatever comes next." None of them said aloud what they were all thinking, that whatever came next might include confronting Haru's own species, the most feared predators in known space. Instead, they watched as the small creature, seemingly content in its new environment, settled into a peaceful sleep under the watchful eyes of its human caretakers. No, one knew then how this simple act of compassion would soon change the course of galactic history. The Horizon altered course for Earth, pushing its engines harder than recommended. Captain Do-hyun Kim knew they needed to reach human space before encountering any other ships. The crew had settled into a routine caring for Haru, who grew stronger and more active each day. "The nutrient formula is working better than we expected," Jia reported during the daily briefing in the captain's office. "Haru has gained significant mass and appears to be developing normally, based on what we can determine without Mograxi baseline data." "Any progress on communication?" Do-hyun asked. Communications Officer Eunha nodded. "Some. Haru seems to understand simple gestures. It recognizes several crew members by sight and responds differently to each of us." "It especially likes Eunha," Min-jae added with a small smile. "Follows her around the medical bay whenever she's on duty." Eunha blushed slightly. "I sing to it." "Mograxi might not understand human language, but music seems to transcend species barriers." "Good work, all of you," Do-hyun said. "How long until we reach Earth space?" Tactical Officer Junseo checked his pad. "At current speed, 11 days, sir." Hyunwoo, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. "Captain, the Galactic Concord has stopped sending messages." "That's good news, isn't it?" Taiho asked. "No," Hyunwoo said grimly. "It means they've given up trying to convince us, and it likely means word of our actions has spread beyond the Concord." A heavy silence fell over the room as everyone understood the implication. The Mograxi might already know about Haru. 6. Days into their journey home, the alarm that no one wanted to hear blared across the ship. Do-hyun rushed to the bridge to find Junseo at the tactical station, his face tense. "3 ships on intercept course, Captain," Junseo reported. "They appeared suddenly at the edge of our sensor range. They must have been using some kind of cloaking. Technology? Identification?" Junseo's voice was steady despite the fear visible in his eyes. "Mograxi warships. Heavy cruiser class, based on Concord intelligence files." Do-hyun took his seat in the command chair, forcing himself to appear calm for his crew. "Time to intercept?" "At their current speed, 17 minutes. "Can we outrun them?" Junseo shook his head. "No, sir. They're faster than us by a significant margin." Do-hyun tapped his comm. Engineering, I need everything you can give me to the engines. Chief Engineer Minjae's voice came back strained. Already pushing them to 110%, Captain. I can maybe get you 115, but not for long. Do it, Toyun ordered. He turned to Yuna. Open a channel to the Galactic Concord emergency frequency. Send our coordinates and situation. Channel open, Yunha confirmed after a moment. But at this distance, it will take hours for a response to reach us. Send it anyway. We need to document what happens here. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. The bridge crew worked efficiently, but the tension was palpable. The Mograxi ships continued their approach, now visible on the main view screen as three dark angular forms against the starfield. They're hailing us, Yuna said suddenly. Do-hyun straightened in his chair. On screen. The view screen flickered, and everyone on the bridge fell silent at the sight that appeared. A Mograxi commander stood in what appeared to be the bridge of his vessel. He was over 7 feet tall, with a gleaming black exoskeleton and mandibles that clicked menacingly as he regarded the humans. His multiple eyes seemed to take in everything at once. I am Hunt Commander Vax's Tekri of the Mograxi Sovereignty, came the translation through the computer. The voice was deep and harsh, with clicking undertones that the translator couldn't fully smooth out. You have taken what is ours. Surrender the cub immediately or we will destroy your vessel. Do-hyun stood facing the alien commander directly. I am Captain Do-hyun Kim of Earth. We rescued a lone survivor from a derelict Mograxi vessel. The cub was dying. We provided medical care that saved its life. Under Galactic Concord law, we have done nothing wrong. The Mograxi commander's multiple eyes narrowed. The laws of prey do not bind the predator. This is your final warning. Before Do-hyun could respond, the door to the bridge slid open. Jia rushed in, holding Haru in her arms. The cub had nearly doubled in size since they found it, though it was still small compared to the adult Mograxi on screen. Its exoskeleton had begun to harden in places, taking on a bluish tint that none of the humans had expected. Upon seeing the Mograxi commander on screen, Haru let out a series of clicks and chirps. It was the most complex vocalization they had heard from the young creature. The Hunt commander went completely still. The bridge fell silent, the only sound the soft hum of the ship's systems. Finally, the Mograxi spoke again, but his tone had changed. There was something like disbelief in his voice. You fed it? You provided nurture fluids to a royal cub? Jia stepped forward, still holding Haru securely. We synthesized nutrients compatible with its biology. It was starving. Impossible. Another Mograxi voice cut in from off-screen. No species has ever successfully synthesized royal nurture fluids. The biochemical complexity. Perhaps you underestimated human determination, Do-hyun said calmly. Or our compassion. The Hunt commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound the humans could not interpret but seemed to indicate intense thought or discussion. Several other Mograxi moved partially into view on the screen, examining Haru through the video feed. The markings, one of them said. The color pattern on the forming exoskeleton. It can only be from the Kethra clutch. The lost royal clutch, another added. Do-hyun glanced at Hyunwoo, who gave a small nod. This information was significant, though they didn't understand exactly how. The Hunt commander focused his attention back on Do-hyun. We will board your vessel, he declared. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. There will be no need for force, Do-hyun replied evenly. We welcome inspection, provided our crew remains unharmed and Haru's well-being is prioritized. Haru? The Mograxi's mandibles clicked again. It is what we call the cub, Do-hyun explained. In our language, it means day to mark a new beginning. The commander stared at him. You named a royal cub? This breaks all protocols. We didn't know your protocols, Do-hyun said simply. We only knew a child needed help. A long silence followed as the Mograxi commander seemed to consider this. Finally, he spoke again. Prepare for boarding. Your medical officer will present the formula used to feed the royal cub. Any deception will result in immediate execution of your entire crew. The communication cut off, leaving the bridge in silence. Well, Tejo said finally. That went better than expected. At least they're talking to us instead of just blasting us into space dust. They're interested in Haru, Gia observed, as the cub chittered quietly in her arms, and in how we kept it alive. The term royal cub suggests Haru may be more important than we realized, Hyunwoo added. This could work in our favor. Do-hyun looked at each of his crew members. They had saved Haru together, against orders and common sense. Now they would face the consequences together. Prepare for boarding, he ordered. Gia, gather all your research on the nutrient formula. Yunha, continue recording everything and transmitting to Earth when possible. Taiho, security teams on standby but weapons holstered. We want to appear cooperative. As the crew moved to carry out his orders, Do-hyun approached Gia and looked down at Haru. The cub reached out one clawed hand and grasped his finger, much as it had done with Yunha days earlier. I hope we did the right thing, Do-hyun said quietly. We saved a life, Gia replied. How can that ever be wrong? Do-hyun had no answer as they felt the slight shudder of the Magraxi ship attaching to their hull. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. Captain Do-hyun Kim stood at the front of his welcoming party, which included political officer Hyunwoo, medical officer Gia holding Haru, and security chief Taiho with two of his officers. All humans remained unarmed as promised. The first Magraxi to step through towered over the tallest human by at least a foot. Hunt Commander Vaxtekri was even more imposing in person than he had been on the view screen. His black exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's lights, and various markings that might have been rank or status symbols decorated his armored chest. Behind him came 6 more Magraxi, 4 obviously warriors with weapons ready, and 2 wearing different coverings that suggested a scientific or medical role. Hunt Commander, Do-hyun said with a small bow of his head. Welcome aboard the Horizon. The Magraxi commander did not return the gesture. His multiple eyes focused immediately on Haru, who chittered excitedly in Gia's arms. The cub appears healthy, he said, his voice translated by the small device on Do-hyun's uniform. This is unexpected. One of the Magraxi scientists stepped forward, extending a handheld scanner toward Haru. May I? Gia nodded and stayed still as the alien device hummed over Haru's small form. The scientist studied the readings, then showed them to his companion. Both made clicking sounds that their translation devices did not convert. Remarkable, the second scientist finally said. Full vitality markers. Proper exoskeletal development. Early signs of secondary tooth formation. The humans have indeed kept the royal cub alive and thriving. Vaxtekri's mandibles clicked rapidly. Show me this nurture fluid you created. This way, Gia said, leading them toward the medical bay. Haru seemed comfortable with the presence of its own kind, though it maintained a grip on Gia's uniform as they walked. In the medical bay, Gia handed Haru to Yunha, who had been waiting there, then accessed the main computer. This is the formula we synthesized, she explained, displaying the molecular structure on the screen. We analyzed residual compounds in Haru's digestive system and created a match using our protein synthesizers. The Magraxi scientists examined the display with obvious interest, occasionally making notes on their own devices. One of them turned to Gia. You created this without Magraxi biological reference data? We had no choice, Gia replied simply. Haru was starving. The Magraxi exchanged looks that Do-hyun couldn't interpret, before the scientist asked, May we examine your synthesis equipment? Over the next several hours, the Magraxi thoroughly investigated the medical bay, took samples of the nutrient formula, and observed Haru's interactions with the human crew. The young cub seemed to recognize its own kind but showed no fear of the humans. In fact, it frequently returned to Yunha or Gia when distressed by the examinations. As the day progressed, more Magraxi came aboard from their ships, including specialists in various fields. They interviewed each crew member who had direct contact with Haru, asking detailed questions about their decisions and actions. Explain why you did not leave the cub at a neutral station as your Concord instructed, demanded an older female Magraxi with elaborate markings on her exoskeleton. She had been introduced as Elder Scientist Nexvarek and seemed to have authority even over the hunt commander. Do-hyun sat across from her in the ship's conference room. Because it needed immediate care, he answered simply. And because it's what humans do. We protect children. All children. The Magraxi elder tilted her head, a gesture the humans had begun to recognize as indicating curiosity or interest. Even knowing our reputation? Even knowing the risk to yourselves? Especially then. Nexvarek studied him for a long moment. Most species fear us. They view us as predators, dangers to be avoided. Yet you took one of our young into your care. We saw a child in need, not a predator, Do-hyun replied. The fact that your species is feared did not change our obligation to help. The elder scientist made a soft clicking sound. Obligation? You believe you have obligations to species not your own? We believe we have obligations to life itself, Do-hyun said, especially when that life cannot protect itself. After a full day of examinations and interviews, the Magraxi gathered in the cargo bay, which they had converted into a formal meeting space. Hunt Commander Vax Tekri sat on a raised platform, with Elder Scientist Nexvarek and several other high-ranking Magraxi beside him. The human crew stood facing them, with Gia holding Haru. We have verified your claim, Vax Tekri announced formally. The cub you call Haru is indeed of the royal bloodline. Its survival is significant to our species. Gia stepped forward slightly. Will you tell us what happened to its ship? The Magraxi exchanged looks, and after a moment Vax's Tekri nodded. Internal conflict, he admitted reluctantly. A faction that opposed the current brood queen. They sought to eliminate potential heirs. We believed all were lost. Political officer Hyunwoo whispered to Captain Do-hyun. They're in the middle of a civil war. This cub could be the key to their succession. Vax Tekri continued. By our most ancient laws, those who provide nurture fluids to a royal cub are bound to it as hearth guardians, a sacred position in our culture. His multiple eyes fixed on Captain Do-hyun. No outsider has ever held such a position. We didn't know your laws, Do-hyun replied. We simply did what was right. And that, said a new voice as another Magraxi entered the cargo bay, is why the humans have passed the trial. The new arrival was larger than the others, her exoskeleton bearing elaborate patterns in gold and blue. The moment she appeared, every Magraxi in the room immediately prostrated themselves, touching their foreheads to the deck. The brood queen, Hunt Commander Vax Tekri whispered. The humans remained standing, unsure of the proper protocol. Haru, however, began making excited chirping sounds, squirming in Gia's arms until she carefully set the cub down. Haru scuttled across the floor and stopped before the brood queen, making a series of clicks and chirps. The queen bent down and gently touched the cub with one clawed hand, then straightened and regarded the humans. I am Zith Avatri, brood queen of the Magraxi. Sovereignty, she said, her voice rich and powerful. You have saved the last heir of the Kithra bloodline. For thousands of years we have believed that only Magraxi can care for Magraxi, that only predators can understand predators. You have proven this belief false. Do-hyun bowed slightly. We are pleased that Haru will be reunited with its people. Haru, the queen repeated the name, an unusual designation for a royal cub, yet fitting perhaps, a new day indeed. She approached the humans, towering over them. You do not understand what you have done, Captain Do-hyun Kim. By giving nurture fluids to a royal cub, you and your crew have become hearth guardians. This bond cannot be broken, not even by the brood queen herself. Hyunwoo stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may, what exactly does this mean for us? The queen's mandibles clicked softly. It means that from this day forward, the humans known as the crew of the horizon are under the protection of the Magraxi sovereignty. It means that the cub you call Haru will require continued contact with its hearth guardians as it grows. She looked down at Haru, who had returned to Gia's side. And it means that the feared isolation between our species has ended. This was not our intention, Do-hyun said carefully. We only wish to save a life. Intention is irrelevant, the queen replied. The fact remains that humans did what no other species would dare to do. You showed no fear. You showed compassion. These qualities are unexpected, valuable perhaps. Vax Tekri rose from his prostration. My queen, the Concord will protest this development. The humans violated direct orders to surrender the cub. Let them protest, the queen said dismissively. The Mograxi do not answer to pray. She turned back to Dohyun. Your ship will be escorted to your homeworld. There, representatives of your government and mine will formalize this new relationship. The cub will remain in your care during this journey, with Mograxi observers present to learn your methods. Her eyes, all of them, fixed on Dohyun. Do you understand the significance of what has happened here today, human? Dohyun looked at his crew, at Haru, and at the Mograxi queen. I believe we have found common ground where none thought possible, and that is always significant. The queen made a sound that might have been approval. Perhaps there is wisdom in your species after
all.
The Galactic Concord Assembly Hall had never seen such an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from all 17 member species sat in tense silence as humans and Mograxi stood side by side before the council. It had been 3 months since the Horizons returned to Earth, escorted by Mograxi warships. Now, after weeks of negotiations, the moment of formalization had arrived. Brood Queen Zitha Vatri towered over everyone in the hall, her elaborate ceremonial armor gleaming under the Yao lights. Beside her stood Captain Dohyun Kim, now appointed as Earth's ambassador to the Mograxi sovereignty. The rest of the Horizons crew sat in places of honor, with Jia and Yunha holding Haru between them. The cub had grown considerably in the past, months, now the size of a human child and able to walk and communicate in basic ways. The head counselor of the Concord, a thin Valari with pale blue skin, looked decidedly uncomfortable as he called the assembly to order. We are gathered to witness the formal agreement between humanity and the Mograxi sovereignty, a non-member state. Murmurs spread through the hall. The Mograxi had always refused membership in the Concord, considering it beneath them to join what they called the Prey Alliance. Their presence here today was itself historical. Let it be recorded, intoned the Brood Queen, her translator conveying her clicking speech into words all could understand, that the species known as humans are henceforth recognized as Hearth Guardians to the royal clutch. Any action against them is an action against the sovereignty itself. Dohyun stepped forward and placed his hand on the agreement tablet, formalizing the alliance between humanity and the galaxy's most feared predators. The Concord representatives watched with a mixture of disbelief and concern. The humans provided nurture fluids when our own were lost, the Brood Queen continued, to the astonishment of the assembly. They saw not a predator's cub, but a child, in need. Such compassion is unknown among the stars. The head counselor cleared his throat. While we acknowledge this unusual bond, we must address certain concerns. The Mograxi have historically been isolationist and, forgive me, aggressive toward other species. What assurances can be given that this alliance will not lead to expanded conflicts? You misunderstand, Dohyun replied. This is not a military alliance but a cultural exchange. The Mograxi have agreed to open limited diplomatic relations with humanity, centered around our shared guardianship of Haru, who represents the future of both our peoples. And what of the cub itself? Asked a Tarani representative. Who will determine its upbringing? At this, Jia stood, still holding one of Haru's clawed hands. Haru will spend time in both societies, learning from humans and Mograxi alike. This was the agreement reached between our governments. The assembly erupted in voices, some questioning, others protesting. The idea of a Mograxi, especially one of royal blood being partly raised by humans, seemed impossible to many. The head counselor attempted to restore order as the debate grew heated. Suddenly, a small but strong voice cut through the noise. Stop fighting. The hall fell silent as everyone turned to look at Haru. The young Mograxi stood on its chair, all 6 eyes scanning the room. It was the first time many had heard a Mograxi cub speak. Humans helped me, Haru continued, its grasp of language basic but clear. Mograxi are my people, Both are important. Yuna placed a gentle hand on Haru's shoulder, pride evident in her face. She and Gia had been teaching the young cub to speak human languages, while Mograxi tutors had been instructing it in their own culture. The Brood Queen's mandibles clicked in what the humans now recognized as approval. The cub speaks wisdom. There is strength in difference. This is what we begin to learn from humans. In the years that followed, the galaxy watched with bemused fascination as the unusual relationship between humans and Mograxi developed. Human colonies gained Mograxi protection fleets, deterring pirates and hostile forces that might have previously targeted the relatively new spacefaring species. Human scientists were granted unprecedented access to Mograxi technology, accelerating Earth's development by decades. In return, humans shared their perspective on cooperation, community, and compassion, concepts that had been foreign to the predator species whose society was built on strength and dominance. Slowly, cautiously, the Mograxi began to engage with other species beyond humans, though always with their human interpreters present. Young Haru grew under the joint care of both species, learning Earth languages alongside Mograxi battle cliques, studying human literature while training in sovereignty combat forms. The cub that would one day lead the Mograxi developed a unique perspective shaped by both worlds. On the 10th anniversary of the first encounter, a formal celebration was held on Earth. Dohyun, Gia, Yunha, and the rest of the original crew from the Horizon stood together, watching as a much-grown Haru addressed the gathered delegates from across the galaxy. At nearly 6 feet tall now, with a fully hardened exoskeleton bearing the blue and gold patterns of the royal bloodline, Haru was an imposing figure, yet the young royal moved with a grace uncommon among Mograxi and spoke with a gentleness that reflected its human upbringing. 10 years ago I was alone, the last of my clutch, Haru said, using human vocal patterns rather than the translator most Mograxi relied on. I would have died if not for the humans who found me. They did not see an enemy. They saw a child. Haru paused, looking at Gia and Yunha, who had become parent figures despite their biological differences. My people were feared for our teeth, Haru continued. But humans taught us that strength without compassion is merely violence. They gave milk to a crying cub when others would have left it to die. And in doing so, they did not tame us. They helped us evolve. In the audience, Hunt Commander Vaxitekri, now a regular visitor to Earth, nodded in agreement. The past decade had changed him too, softening his views on what he once called prey species. We are different, Haru acknowledged. Humans and Mograxi come from different worlds with different biologies and histories. But we have found that difference can be strength when we choose to learn from each other rather than fear each other. After the ceremony, as the crowds dispersed, Gia approached Dohyun. The former captain, now gray at the temples, smiled as she joined him. Did you ever imagine this outcome when you gave that order to bring Haru aboard? She asked. Dohyun shook his head. Never. I was just trying to save one life. And instead, you changed the course of galactic history, Gia said with a gentle laugh. Not bad for a routine mapping mission. They watched as Haru moved among the delegates, equally at ease with humans and other species as with fellow Mograxi. The young royal had become a living bridge between worlds once thought incompatible. Across the stars, a new saying had begun to spread, quoted in schools and diplomatic meetings alike. The galaxy feared its teeth, but only humans gave milk to the predator's crying cub. It became the foundation of humanity's reputation among the stars. The species brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to see beyond fear, to offer compassion where others saw only danger. And in a galaxy of predators and prey, it made humans something unique. Neither the strongest nor the wisest, but perhaps the most essential species of all, the ones who could build bridges where others saw only chasms. As evening fell and the celebration continued, Haru found a moment alone with the crew who had saved its life. No words needed to be said. The young Mograxi simply reached out, taking Gia's hand in one claw and Yuna's in another, while nodding respectfully to Dohyun. Two species, once divided by fear, now united by something stronger, the simple act of kindness that had changed everything. The end.